Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Caruso. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder here at KnowledgeNet.ai. And joining me today is Jenn Rowe, the Enterprise Sales Manager at KnowledgeNet, and James Cohen. And James wears many hats. I'm going to call him our AI sales engineer. I think every day I'm changing your title, James.
every day I change my hat.
Yes, it's such a fast-moving industry. So for those that are joining the webinar, there's a chat session or chat option at the bottom. We'd love to make this interactive, so please chat. But the whole purpose of this is that this is really about Jenn. So Jenn, you've been it's all about how Jenn is using AI to help her sales processes herself. But Jenn, you've been in sales now for about 10 years, right?
More than that, but yeah, maybe almost 14.
Almost 14 years. Great. And this is the story. And this over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to have an interactive session with Jenn. But to see how she's using AI to help build her sales pipeline. But Jenn, why don't we just start off with how did you used to build your sales pipeline? Because I think that's how we all used to do it in the past.
Yeah, very manual.
1,000-foot view.
So very manual, right? Used to pick up the phone and cold call or look up what kind of target companies manually using Google. And sometimes I had an Excel spreadsheet. Sometimes I was in Salesforce. I was doing everything manually. I remember going to trade shows and walking in and being like, I'm so overwhelmed and I'm the most prepared on my team. And I have this Excel spreadsheet on my iPad. And I still would get there and be like, there's about 300 more people here that I didn't prepare to see or know that they were coming. And so KnowledgeNet's allowed me to be more prepared, but also build my pipeline top of funnel and get to the right people.
Yeah. And so in the past, were leads just dropping out of the sky for you, or were you using products like ZoomInfo or things like that to generate lead lists, or how are you going about it?
I used anything and everything under the sun. ZoomInfo is one, Seamless is another. I used Outreach. I used all those different systems that you can use to help aid in your sales efforts.
Yep. So Outreach as far as your sequencing and things like that, right?
Yep.
And especially for those on the line, I'm sure a lot of those tools will resonate as to what they've done before. And it was I remember my first exposure to this type of tools. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I can do a search for a certain title by a company, by an industry, and I can get a list of people, which is great. But at the end of the day, these are really cold people, right?
Right.
So, and then you stick them into an outreach sequence, and then Outreach or Apollo sequence or whatever tool you want to do for your emailing, but you're really only getting less than a fraction of 1% response rates, if that, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do, it was all a numbers game,
Meaningful.
right? Now, a lot of us have been using LinkedIn as well, right? And you've used LinkedIn Sales Navigator in the past. And what would you do with Sales Navigator?
I created lists. I would do searches. I would sometimes, I do what I did using KnowledgeNet, except the results were a lot different. I would go into LinkedIn, figure out who I knew and how, and try to get to the right people, and create those lists, those target lists that I wanted to go after, and figuring out how to get to them.
Great.
Good question. So what is the biggest advantage that you've actually seen using KnowledgeNet compared to the tools that you used previously, ZoomInfo and LinkedIn Sales Navigator and the tools of yesteryear?
They don't compare.
Because, for the last almost 14 years, you said AI didn't exist, 14 years ago. So can you kind of walk us through the ramp up and then ultimately what's changed?
There's so much that's changed. It's honestly still my brain still catching up to everything that we can use right now. And if I'm being completely honest, even as a sales rep, I would have imagined this tool if I could have, but my brain couldn't even go there, if that makes sense. I was like, oh, that's impossible. It can never happen. I could never, just be given this list and know everybody that knows everybody and how to get to the right person, leveraging my network and my company's network. That wouldn't even have crossed my mind as in the realm of possibilities. And that is the very reason that there's been so much success in building my pipeline, is because I have this tool that is basically doing all of the legwork for me and doing the work that was almost impossible that we can't do. I can sit there and spend hours upon hours, which no one's going to do, to figure out who I knew and how I'm going to get references and all this stuff through Navigator. But it's not going to be an automatic where I'm just given the information that I need to do it more efficiently. And sometimes you couldn't even get the information that you were looking for. And KnowledgeNet's leveraging AI to do just that.
Okay, great. So real world examples, Jen, can you share your screen and just go over kind of what you're doing in LinkedIn? And for some of the people on the line, I'm sure they're doing something similar, but we're also going to share some additional capabilities that maybe a lot of people on the line aren't aware of that we can do.
So I kind of want to just share with you something that's very important, right? KnowledgeNet has, like, if you see, I'm on my LinkedIn, I have 500, this guy has 500 connections. I have 0 mutual connections with this person. But if you look at KnowledgeNet and the extension that I popped open, I have 3 first-degree connections. Now I know these.
Hold on, Jen, let me just pause you just for a second, because not everybody in the line may be familiar with KnowledgeNet. So can you just close down that extension just real quick? So you're in LinkedIn, right? And there's a button there that says that's contact info. So if I click on that button on Brian's record here, I'm trying to reach Brian. I see his profile, but I don't have his email address. I don't have his phone number. And LinkedIn is saying that you have no connections to Brian, right?
Correct.
So now through KnowledgeNet, and there's other tools out there that do this, but you can open up KnowledgeNet, and then what does KnowledgeNet do?
KnowledgeNet's going to give you not just his contact information. And I skip over that so quickly because I take it for granted now. Like, I used to use it with Zoom Info and it would give you contact information. So I guess it's not as value as the meat of KnowledgeNet, which is your connection path to this person. So you do get contact information. You get everything about this person, their mobile number. You can even get their personality profile, which is reading their DISC profile. That reads anything that's written about them, anything they've written about themselves and their online presence, and then basically gives you a path to how to reach out to this person, how to negotiate, how to book a meeting, how to do all of those things. So it'll actually, we don't know this person, so it's going to be all about trust here, but it gives you every single thing that you need to know about this person. And then you could ask.
Let me just pause you there, Jen, for a second. So, and for some of the people on the line who are familiar with KnowledgeNet, we're going to be going over how to do this at scale, how to do hundreds, if not thousands of people at a time.
Yep.
But you're saying that KnowledgeNet does a couple of things. LinkedIn just gives you some summary level information, and KnowledgeNet is giving the sales rep or the account manager or the recruiter deep insights about the person, right? Just
absolutely
their email address. Sometimes it's their business and their personal, their phone number, their mobile number, and even their personality profile. So much more richer insight. And then where a lot of people are finding a tremendous value is, okay, now I get all this information. How does Jen connect to Brian? And what does KnowledgeNet tell you about how Jen connects to Brian?
So it's giving me 3 people. This is what I want to explain because it's extremely important that this is a big difference from what I used at Navigator to what I use in KnowledgeNet. When you're in LinkedIn, you're using strictly your login and your connections that you've built in your LinkedIn profile or LinkedIn account. When you are in KnowledgeNet, you have synced your email, your calendar, and your LinkedIn network. Plus, your colleagues have done so. So even if there was 3 people on a team, imagine 3 networks plus the historical interaction data of emails and who you've met with. Why is that important? Well, the first thought is someone could have been interacting with someone 3 years ago on an email, and then they switched roles and went to another company that's a target company of yours, and you have no idea. That's what this map shows. So these interactions and this syncing creates a visual representation that's extremely easy to visualize, but it's also organizing all of your connections and paths into this person. So Laura Elliott is actually one of my best friends, college roommate, and you can see it tells me how they know each other. So Laura and Brian worked together for a year at Wolverine Worldwide. So her being in marketing and him being in operations, they may or may not know each other, but I would text her and be able to figure that out, right? We have this write an intro email, which basically can share asking for the intro. So if I didn't know Laura that well, it would write an intro email asking Laura for that introduction to Brian.
So let me just pause here, Jen, and just go back a second. So into that screen. So in the past, even if you are paying the $100 a month for Sales Navigator, which is the LinkedIn Pro version, Sales Navigator itself did not expose this path connection to you. But KnowledgeNet is providing deep insights and saying, hey, your best friend is worked at the same company as Brian, right?
Right.
And if anything, it allows you to reach out to your best friend and says, tell me more about Wolverine Worldwide. I want to reach out to a prospect, the owner of this new company, which fits my ideal customer profile. And that's the power as to what KnowledgeNet is doing.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do we, so doing this for onesie twosies makes a lot of sense, right? So you're getting ready for a meeting and things like that. But how do I leverage this at scale? Like I want to build 100 people I need to reach out to. How do I do this at scale now?
So I'll actually share that with you. And I'm going to share let's eat your own dog food, as James would say. I did this and I found super connectors, and I'm going to call them super connectors. Think of a super connector as someone that you would go to and say, hey, can you introduce me to this person? I want them to buy my X, Y, and Z of whatever I'm selling. And they would do it without hesitation. This person is someone you're connected to on LinkedIn. And then once you get to their LinkedIn profile, what I want to do is I want to find out who they know. So I go into Nick, as I'm using Nick as an example, and I'm going to share.
That guy looks familiar.
Yeah. And I'm going to save his network. This is basically giving me access to all of his connections, their email, everything. So it's creating a list for me that I'll have access to look through Nick's connections. Now, I did this for 15 people, super connectors, right? I booked 15 meetings. It took me 35 minutes total of effort to get through these searches. And I was able to book 10 meetings. I texted 15 people and I closed one deal, and I added the largest deal to my pipeline I've ever added since I've been at KnowledgeNet for 5,500 user licenses.
Let me just pause there for a second. So everybody in the line, assume everyone's using LinkedIn.
Yep.
And it's all about, okay, how do I leverage connections, right? And how do I leverage, so can you actually close this down on the syncing part, Jen?
Yep.
And just go back. So most people don't even know this. So you went to my profile on LinkedIn, and because we're connected, you actually can access my network.
Right.
Which I think most of the people on this call probably don't even know that. So you're going into my network and you're saying, okay, who does Nick know that fits my ideal customer profile?
Right.
Right. Now, obviously we work together. So, but you could do this for anybody, right? So for everybody in the line, I bet everybody in the line has over 1,000 LinkedIn connections. And the thought being, okay, well, who do my connections know that meet my ideal customer profile? And then how do I find them? And Sales Navigator and LinkedIn doesn't make that really easy, right? Like you can't easily say, okay, LinkedIn, find all my ideal customer profiles that are across my 10 best friends. This is what KnowledgeNet is designed
or
to do.
10 best previous customers, right? Like if you were connected on LinkedIn to a very satisfied customer, this would be a great way to surface some referrals.
Yeah, that's actually an awesome point, James. So as soon as you have a closed deal with a satisfied customer, I challenge everybody thinking who's on the call right now, how often are you going into your CEO that you just closed a great deal with and they love you now? How are you leveraging their network? Because I bet if you went to them and said, hey, can you give me a referral? You know, maybe they'll think off the top of their heads, maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe. But what if you went to them and said, look, I looked into your network and I identified 20 people. Could you give me a referral to these 20 people, right?
Yep.
So Jen, you were able to automate this by syncing my network. You did this for 15 people. And then what did you do? Now you had thousands and thousands of people, right?
So at scale, what we can do is we can basically take all of your super connectors connections and put them all in one kind of place, right? But what we also are doing is we're layering on a top, so we can do this at a scale, is we're layering on top of that, what is your ideal customer profile or ideal ICP? So if you say my ideal customer is between this revenue bracket, within this department, they've got X amount of people in marketing, they've got, these titles, whatever your search criteria is for what you're trying to accomplish, KnowledgeNet's going to filter across all of those connections to find only the ones that meet your ideal customer profile. So any one of the connections now is super interesting. So I think in the final result, there was like 4,000 or something, that I had 4,000 total. But what's cool is I have it organized here by my super connectors. So I could say, I only want to see, Greg Haney's network or whoever it is, and I can see it by the connector, so that when I go to Greg Haney, I can ask him for all of these at once, right?
So Jen, I can see if I look at so this is what KnowledgeNet was able to suck out of LinkedIn. So it got the name, the B is the URL of the person, their first name, their display name, their headline. And you don't have to go through all this, but also the industry, the number of employees at the company, et cetera. But I saw in column F, there's ICP score, and there are numbers on there. Right. So how is this ICP, ideal customer profile score? What attributes? Well, James, I think this is your expertise area, right, James? What attributes is it using to score that ICP?
So essentially, we internally and for our customers are able to sort of based on the ideal customer profile, which it can be a form that they fill out or a conversation that we have. We are able to rank what is most important about your prospects for you. So maybe it's a geographical location, maybe it's an industry or a vertical, maybe it's a company size or franchise locations or annual revenue, something like that. So essentially you would just create your own algorithm to triage all of the noise and separate that signal, and then rank the customer to how closely they meet all of your criteria. So right there on column D, row 6, Ben Holiday, Chief Revenue Officer at Netography, he gets a 95 out of 100. That's pretty impressive because if I remember correctly, this list started around somewhere, 14 to 20,000 people in this list. And by leaning on AI, we were able to go through and determine exactly who was the closest match to the ideal customer, their title, their location, their revenue, their employee count, their industries, et cetera. And now we're able to do this at scale rather than spending a decade going through a list of 20,000 people.
Yeah, so this is a completely different way of doing things, right? So the old way, the Zoom info, the seamless, the Apollo way of doing things is you say, okay, I'm looking for chief revenue officers with employees from 1 to 200, right? Located in XYZ, and you get it, right? But I think this is interesting. If you go down column E, Jen, how many variations of those titles are we seeing? Head of revenue, head of growth, head of sales, et cetera, right?
Yep.
So this is coming in from a completely different direction. We're starting with your network, getting all those people, and then pushing that through AI to filter out the results. So going down from 20,000 down to a much more manageable, highly targeted list, right? And it's amazing how many different permutations of titles there are for people. But Jen, this list fits your ideal customer profile, right?
Yes.
And then from here, so there's, as James was saying, there's titles, there's industry, there's employees, there's what's the company focusing on. And even for each one of these people, we expose the company, and even for those companies, we can go out and search the web for that company to find out additional information about that company, again, if that company fits your ideal customer profile. So I think that, so once you've got this list what do you do now, Jen? So you've got this list that you used AI to get the people, filter the people. Now what do you do with the list?
So what I did is you go by super connector. So I went to, I'm going to give you a real example here. I went to my super connectors and I selected the person that I wanted to ask for the intro of whoever it was. So I found the people that I wanted to start with first, and I looked by company because if it's a large company that I'm familiar with, that's where I wanted to start. So I started there. You can filter it any way you want. That's just how I did it. And then I went to Lauren Kennedy as an example and said, can you introduce me to these 3 people, right? And I asked that in a text message because she's my best friend and I can text her, and these are why they're super connectors. So I can text all these people, and it's someone, that's the way you should think about this. It should be someone that you can text, right? Like, you know them well enough, you're going to text them. And I did this for 15 people. I asked for like 2 to 3 references per person, and I probably got 1 from each one of the ones I asked. And then of course, didn't get 1 from everyone, but 10 meetings from 15 messages in 35 minutes is pretty good. Closing deals and adding the biggest deal in my pipeline. I mean, that is the most success I've had building my pipeline and top of funnel in my entire sales career.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And this now, I know for myself, in my LinkedIn network, I have about 2,000 people. I probably personally know about 200 of those 2,000, right? So just because they're connected to them doesn't mean that they know them personally, right? But this is now still a great list to still reach out to them via like LinkedIn InMail, right? Because when that person receives it, I don't know about, I mean, I'm sure you guys do. I get a lot of LinkedIn outreach from people I have 0 connections to. I'm not even first or second degree connected. So I just ignore those. If I get a reach out to from a person that I'm, 1 degree separated from, I'm much more inclined. I'm like, well, I don't know this person, but I'm connected to them over 1 degree. So I know that they're real, right? So James, you do a lot of our LinkedIn automated outreach for us and our customers. So what can we do now with Jen's list from an automated perspective now, James?
So we've already ranked it, with the ICP score. So if she's able to text her super connectors and ask for referrals, that would be step 1. Step 2 is taking the rest of the list and automating LinkedIn connections and messaging and voice messaging, running in tandem with an email sequence, doing like multi-channel outreach. And it's completely automated, so it's able to scale. And because we leverage AI, we're able to make all of those interactions and messages personalized, where you could never do something like that before.
Right. So I always like saying the A in AI is automation, not the word artificial, right? Automation intelligence, where we're automating that task. So for Jen to manually reach out to every single person here, so these are all at most 1 degree of separation, meaning that they're, it's Lauren's network or Michael's network. But for her to do that, I mean, Jen, it would take you years to do that. Right.
And by the way, I think we're forgetting, like, manually, I would have had to gone into Lauren's network, look at all of her connections, figure out who she knows, and filter what meets my ICP for each individual person. I just did this in minutes, right? Like, where I'm pulling all this data, getting all the information, and then to automate this is mind blowing. It's doing the work for me, so I can focus my time on enterprise deals that I'm working versus the top of funnel stuff.
Great. And so you can do that, and then James, with James's expertise and what we're doing with KnowledgeNet behind the scenes, we can automate you reaching out with a LinkedIn request to these people. Then if they accept, then sending them a message. And then James, we're even doing audio drops via LinkedIn. And it's actually coming as Jen's audio drop.
Yes. And
so James, what percentage of this is a great way to build Jen's professional network automatically while she's working, she's on conference calls, whatever. This is automated building out her network.
Yeah.
What sort of response rate are you getting, James, where people are responding to these in-mail messages and so forth? What sort of percentage response are you seeing?
I don't want it to sound ridiculous because people are probably used to the statistic of less than 1% of cold emails get responded to, but everybody knows that industry average or standard. Confidently, I will say 30%, 30, possibly 35%.
Yeah.
There is that much engagement.
So for the people listening in on this, and I've been in this space for a long while, I've been involved in the spam cannons where it's all about a numbers game. To get numbers that are close to a 30% number is absolutely incredible, right? So and doing that in an automated fashion, and where this is going is for everybody who's on the call that's hearing terms like AI assistants, AI agents. This falls directly into an AI agent concept. You're having AI behind the scenes, finding connections, scoring those connections, prioritizing it, dropping them into LinkedIn, and automating what you or someone on your team would have done. And I've seen horror stories in the past where you might think about outsourcing this to like the Philippines or South America, where you have a person that's doing this for you. I've heard horror stories about that, affecting reputations and not having the same quality. When you're using an AI agent to do this, you have a lot more control, a lot more consistency, and it's a great way to build your top of funnel pipeline. So we only have a few minutes left. For everybody that's on the line, I just encourage you, if you have any questions, drop it into the chat. But is there anything else, James, you want to cover in closing?
Not particularly. I would just say if people were interested in finding out more, they can reach out to Jenn directly. And I wanted to congratulate Jenn for being able to lean on this and book 10 meetings using 15 messages and get the largest deal she's ever had in her pipeline. And yeah, that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, it's all about, we all know it's all about relationship selling, and this is allowing you to really leverage those relationships. So anything, Jenn, you want to add in closing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I just, again, in a reminder, the biggest difference for me was, I have the network of everyone at KnowledgeNet because they've synced their emails, their interactions, their calendars. LinkedIn didn't have that. And why that's so important is just the example I showed you with Brian. It's like no connections are shown on LinkedIn, but I've got these other connections that are actually even better connections of people that I know even better to ask for those references. So I think that's the biggest difference for me. And of course, automating it takes off of everything that I'm doing so I can have more time during the day.
Awesome. All right. Well, there should have been a little pop-up that showed on the bottom of your screen as far as if you want to reach out to Jenn and she can help you, or we would love to help everybody that's on the line. And then in closing as well, we are running a webinar series. So you should have access to that link to see where else. But in 15 days, we're going to be going over one that is automating building your top of funnel, another AI agent that takes a look at who's visiting your website and automatically building top of funnel based upon those website visitors. Even though they might be anonymous visiting your website, we can identify who those people are, drop them into a sequence and build your top of funnel. And then a month from now, we're going to have one about how you can automatically retarget your old customers. We've been doing this for several of our customers, which is very, very successful, which is all about where are my customers now? I've been in business for 10 years. Obviously, my customers' contacts have moved on to other companies. We just did this for a company where they said, hey, we do a lot of business with Amazon, and we want to find out who's left Amazon, where have they gone to, because we want to go after them to see if we can grow our pipeline with where they are now. All right, so I'm going to close this down. Everybody, thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions or interest, please reach out to anybody, but especially Jenn. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, James. Thanks, Jenn. All right.